So this morning what did we do? We connected with our inner self, and then later on we had a very heady discussion about GMOs, and now I'm going to ask you to indulge me in telling you about what we did to start a small business. So I have about 12 lessons learned over the years. This way you can knock them off one by one, and when we get to 10 you say, oh, thank God there are only 2 left. Hopefully there'll be some resonance here with some food entrepreneurs in the audience. It's kind of a 30-year journey of lessons learned. So it's a rather narrow experience of cheesemaking and dairy, but here we go. So, as crime novelists concede, once you've got motive, opportunity, and weapons are easy. Lesson 1, think about serendipitous accidents, formative events, identify your motive, and let it be your guide. During your junior year of college in Paris, I spent the summer in Brittany with Joan and Lilia Lebras on their organic dairy of 14 cows, 40 goats, half a dozen hogs, and several score of free-range chickens. Life on this hardscrabble farm, though I didn't know it at the time, was perhaps the most formative of my adult life. Both the cows' and goats' milk was converted into a number of fresh and aged cheeses, the very cheeses that are the basis of our product line at Vermont Butter Cheese Company, now Vermont Creamery. The byproduct from cheesemaking, the whey was fed to the pigs. The entire pig was used to make various kinds of charcuterie, saucisson, and pâtés. We trucked cheeses and charcuterie to several farmers markets along the coast and at a large organic market in Paris. I spent my time working with the goats, moving pastures, milking, and making cheese. It was a summer, so a lot of time was spent loading and unloading hay wagons and preparing for farmers markets. Theirs was a marginal existence. Family life, however, was rich. There was a strong sense of purpose, and because we were raising food, great importance was given to the daily rituals of mealtime. The French know where their food comes from, and they are connected to the working rural landscape. Here, I learned the intrinsic value of terroir, the relationship between place and culture and food, an idea that wouldn't come to the United States for another 20 years. After working as a herdsperson for a large goat farm in New Jersey, I moved to Vermont. My grandmother had lived in Barnard, Vermont, so I had a connection to this place as a child, where at the time there were more cows than people. Seemed like a good place to make cheese. Fast forward to Vermont Department of Agriculture, where I was working in the dairy lab, and the then marketing director for lamb promotion and fruits and vegetables, Bob Reese, was organizing the first ever Vermont Products Banquet, a promotional dinner to celebrate all of the great foods that are produced here in Vermont. Chef Anton Flory at the Top Notch in Stowe wanted Bob to find him some goat cheese to serve with his lamb. Of course, Bob is thinking, what is goat cheese? Where will I find that? Remembering that someone in the department lived on a goat farm in France, he said, no problem, chef, I'll find you the cheese. So as a producer, I got myself invited to the banquet, found myself sitting at a table with Bob and his wife, Sandy. When a few of the chefs came over and left their business cards inquiring about how they too might buy some cheese, it was Bob's wife, Sandy, who jokingly suggested that Bob and I start a goat cheese business. Bob and I sort of sized each other up, shrugged, couldn't really think of an excuse not to call them on their flattery. We started our business. It was actually serendipitous. My dream of a cheese business was coming into focus. For Bob, he had just completed an MBA and was chomping for an opportunity to test the reality of some soil-based venture. Bob and I already had a strong desire to do this, so it was the early events in our lives that set the stage, not the dinner itself. And so when times get tough in business and our sense of purpose felt muddled, by revisiting the past, we occasionally got clearer about the future. We wanted to make some awesome cheese. So, Judith, this is your chance to bring it on.
This is the slow dancing summit, isn't it? Would you take a deep breath with me, please? And now a nice juicy sigh when we all let it out together. Now this time, jump over all the politeness norms you've been taught. Really sigh it out, okay? Yes. Doesn't that feel good? So, what's a girl to do? She's paired with this dream creamery. Is she supposed to be Vanna White? And tell you and show you all the yummy stuff, which I've been trying all week? Or, I told Chanta, well, I'm going to go out and buy 12 pears so I can juggle them. And she said, that's not the kind of pear I'm talking about. So I thought I would do a silent modern dance to interpret each word that Allison said, right? So that brought me full circle to what I really know how to do, which is play, especially InterPlay, which I learned in seminary many years ago. And we play around with our bodies and our voices, and it sort of comes out as movement, sometimes singing, and storytelling. So, we're going to do some of that together. And right now, what I need from you guys is just 4 or 5 words. What comes to mind when you think of slow dairy? Just milking. What else? Yeah, let's go. Thank you. Aging cheese.
Creamy.
Definitely. What? Crash? Did you say smells? Perfect. Why is this coming off? Is my ear not big enough? Thank you. Louder? Slathering? If we had more time, I would take 4 times this many words, but okay. I'm going to do what we call a DT3, dance, talk, dance, talk, dance, talk. And I will include as many of those as I can. Dare I say that there is such a thing as creamy manure? You know there is. We've all seen it. But if you really know how to age cheese, now that's creamy goat cheese. The smells? Well, you tell me. I will be slathering the butter on every piece of gluten-free anything that I can find.
How did she know that's what we do before we make cheese every day? Okay, lesson 2. Now, just so you know, she's not going to do this after each lesson, so we're saving her for the high points. Okay, a little market research can be a dangerous thing. Trust your gut. We organized the management team and completed all of our market research in one evening. Clueless? Absolutely. We had passion and motive. Yes, we needed to do our homework and make some assumptions. In 1984, market research would have told us there was no market for goat cheese, much less esoteric cultured products like cultured butter, creme fraiche, and mascarpone. One couldn't really buy it in a retail store, and besides, Americans simply wouldn't eat or ask for products if they couldn't pronounce a name. When starting out, you had little or nothing to lose and a license to be a little reckless and irrational. 30 years ago, the dairy farmers in my valley thought I was tilting at windmills. The idea of milking goats and then making cheese out of that milk was, I concede, a little preposterous. Now, 31 years later, when we have an awful lot to lose, we can get a little paralyzed. Today, we rely on data and return on investment to guide our business decisions. So, okay, sure, listen to the research, run all the spreadsheets, but don't let them stifle an idea that feels right in your gut. We certainly didn't overthink the brand and spend a lot of energy on our positioning and communications strategy. One day I was milking cheese in the milk house, and I had this portable phone, and I'd have it on my shoulder, and Bob called me and he said, I got to go to the Secretary of State's office because we need to have a company name. I'm like, yeah, we need a name, definitely. Well, how about we use Vermont because we're in Vermont? Like, yeah, definitely, Vermont's good because we're here in Vermont. Sounds good. Well, we make butter, we make cheese, so why don't we call it Vermont Butter and Cheese? Oh, yeah, definitely. But let's call it a company because we want the bank to take us seriously and know that we're really in business. So that was how we came up with our company name. We thought that was absolutely brilliant. Lesson 3. Dream, don't be a dreamer. We still have to live in the real world. Now, the real world can be a harsh place to do business for someone who marched around the foothills of the Alps with a herd of goats, and distribution meant an unrefrigerated de chevaux of chèvre aged to perfection en route to the French Riviera. Now, the world became a very real for Bob and me as we each contributed $1,200 in cash to start our business. The United Church of Christ had a small revolving ag loan fund. Their improbable, generous $4,000 loan was enough to leverage a loan of $10,000 from the Randolph National Bank. Bank President Ray Gray asked, now, do people eat goat cheese? We said, no, but they're going to love this stuff. Oh, and where will you get the milk? Oh, there's no milk. But this is Vermont. Farmers are going to produce milk for us for sure. So the bank loan purchased a boiler to pasteurize milk in the Little Brookfield Milk House. We cajoled backyard 4-H goat breeders to get a license to sell milk. We insulated a bed of a tattered Toyota pickup with blue board. I drove from White River to St. Johnsbury to Richford, picking up 10 to 20 gallons of milk from each farm twice a week to make goat cheese. So goat cheese sales were sluggish at the farmers market in Norwich. In 1984, people didn't buy cheese at the farmer's market, and definitely not goat cheese. From day one, we had to create cash in the business to pay our farmers and make our loan payments. We couldn't wait for the goat's milk supply to catch up with our hoped-for demand, so we added a cow's milk product called creme fraiche. The early marketing plan was pretty rudimentary. Create cash to stay in business. There were days and years when it felt like staying in business was the only reason for being in business. Sorry to say that the social mission was pretty low on the list of priorities. We were 15 years into the business before we felt some latitude to make the variety of cheeses that I remember making and eating in France. If you have lemons, make lemonade. We used the limited resources of the moment, but kept the bigger vision for the longer term. Lesson 4. Quality is everything. Give them your best effort. We make stuff, we make cheese. Our stuff implies a certain directness and irrefutability, keeps us honest. That is the good news. The bad news is that the business of making stuff is really hard. In this business of making good food, specifically, you have 4 big problems to solve: taste, consistency, shelf life, and safety. What is the integrity of my ingredients? This is great today, but can I make it tomorrow? Now that I've done all this, can anyone afford to buy it? Getting 2 of the 4 is easy. Getting all 4 is tricky and just plain takes sustained effort with a lot of mistakes being fed to the pigs. In the early years, we were not the ship-shape, audited, A-rated creamery we are today. Quality calamities were more frequent and devastating in the early years. They made us aware of 2 things: our daily vulnerability as a company and the importance of our business relationships, not only with our customers, but our competitors, bankers, suppliers, our colleagues and friends in the community. It is lucky we never lost a single distributor. Today, our quality control is excellent and our cheeses are better than ever. But it takes your customers and colleagues, give them your best. Take care of them. And for us, this niche of Vermont foods or goods and services of any kind here is too small and expectations are too high to provide anything less. You can get away with mediocrity for a moment, even 2, but don't make it a habit. Build a quality system that will only allow a substandard product to happen by an extraordinary glitch. Lesson 5. Stick to your knitting, don't get distracted. It's easy to get muddled with this one, but ask yourself how you best spend your time, and you can get clear about what you are not good at pretty quick. We knew at Vermont Creamery we were not distributors, retailers, farmers, or dot-commers. Early on, this had less to do with being disciplined and focused, and more to do with the fact that we didn't have any cash to distract us from our core business of making a better cheese and getting it into more mouths. Today, we have a new and seductive opportunity a week, but we make cheese, and we won't even allow ourselves to stray too far from one family of cheeses. While this makes us antsy from time to time, it also produces a high level of expertise. Head down, duplicate quality every day, and you have a fighting chance. Lesson 6. As the market changes, so will your business strategy. Go with the flow. Yes, our cheese may not change, but consumer attitudes certainly evolve. Back then, why would a French chef in New York buy a cheese from Vermont when he could have the real thing from France? And rightly so. French goat cheeses were the best, and anything imported was worth buying over an American product. With no context of artisan American-made cheeses, our survival strategy was to build credibility with the chefs. They would be our disciples, but the onus was on us to create the demand for products that consumers didn't even know that they wanted, much less needed. Today, people want to know where and how things are made. Remember Portlandia? What were the chickens' names? People are looking for freshness, flavor, authenticity, and safety. How ironic that in 1987, at the New York Fancy Food Show, the distributor with whom we were exhibiting said to us, "Okay, for God's sakes, don't tell anybody you're making cheese at the farm." And we're like, right, no cheese at the farm. Today, it is the first thing you say. Local, sustainable, and GMO transparency is expected. And we still need to create new cheeses that consumers don't know yet that they want, much less need. I just said that we should stick to our knitting and do what we do best. That said, we have to go with the flow. Who would have thought that the demand for goat cheese would have exploded? In Vermont, we are all challenged to meet increased demand for excellent cheese every day. We need to make sure that our growth is sustainable and thoughtful. We need to assure that our farm suppliers are thoughtful and sustainable. How do we do this? Lesson 7. Be audacious, build value, and talk about it. We buy milk from 12 goat farms in Vermont, as well as from a cooperative in Ontario. Globally, demand for milk is growing faster than the supply. While milking goats is not our core competency, it was clear that in order to stimulate milk production and attract new goat farmers, we had to demonstrate the viability of such an enterprise. Simply put, farmers won't choose goat farming if they can't make a profit. And the existing farms won't grow if they don't have the margin and working capital to do so. As much as we increased the milk price, the challenges of operating a modern dairy were tough and in need of new energy. We decided to get back into farming ourselves and feel the pain right alongside our producers. While we don't pretend to be experts at farming, we have some experience in figuring stuff out and getting as much help from experts along the way. Now, if you want to live on the edge, get yourself a farm. If you're an entrepreneur at heart and yearn for a risky project to keep you awake at night, get yourself a farm. The search for a farm was short. A cut-to-the-chase inquiry to Carol and Perry Hodgson of Randolph, asking if they were ready to retire and sell their iconic first farm out of the village, produced a matter-of-fact, "Yup, let's talk." We drained about all we could from the Creamery coffers without sending our bankers walking. We had the good fortune of garnering the support of 3 important Vermont foundations, who helped us to purchase the real estate. The deal was that they would hold the mortgage for 10 years and convey the farm to Ayersbrook Goat Dairy, provided that we raised additional capital. More patient investor angels loaned us the capital to build a new barn and buy the foundation herd. This shaggy dog story is nothing more than code for how impossible it is for young wannabe farmers to purchase a farm, much less have working capital to see their way to success. It is indeed sobering, reminding us of early days of trying to make a profit from cheesemaking. And so we started. A bit of rigor in the business planning, operational efficiencies, and having the best genetics and nutrition program are crucial to success. We gathered goat kids from reputable herds around the country. We're now milking 280 goats with about 700 on the farm. In 2 seasons, we hope to have healthy animals available to new or existing farmers who want to start or grow their herds. We hope that dairy farmers will want to see our books and that ag students will want to live and work at the farm. Are we making some big assumptions in hoping that real Vermonters do milk goats? I guess so. And in fact, when we were building the barn and building the milking parlor, the contractor who is there does dairy installations around the state would, these dairy farmers would come to the farm and they'd say, well, we're here to see Robert. And we'd say, oh, great, he's, in the parlor. And they'd say, well, we're not here to see the goat farm. We're not interested in goats. It's not a serious animal. We're not here for that. And we'd say, okay, that's great. Well, Robert's over there. And then they'd say, and so what are you feeding these animals? And we'd say, well, and they'd ask, well, now what's the milk to feed ratio? And they'd start asking questions. So again, we sort of imagine that if you build it, they will come. So not only is this a demonstration for the next generation of farmers, but also for our customers. We can't emphasize enough the value of what we do every day on a farm, all of which defends the cost of the milk and the cost of the cheese. We currently buy enough milk outside of Vermont from about 4,000 goats. To replace that milk, we would need to keep about 2,000 acres of land in agriculture in Vermont. We need the milk. We have new farms to populate. We have to make it work. Nothing would make me happier than to know that we help to stimulate a new brand of agriculture in Vermont. Judith, hit it.
Did you hear that? A new brand of agriculture in Vermont. Incredible. New farmers, new goat milkers. So, get yourself a farm. One of my favorite young people in Brattleboro, Jacob Levkoff. Those of you who have seen NEYT know his fame. I thought that I was going to be telling stories about Jacob Levkoff because I thought he was going to be a really famous actor. I mean, he had it all. He had the storytelling skills, he had the acting skills. He was phenomenal. And he went off to college and he did screenplays and all kinds of stuff. And he fell in love with plants. And his father told me that he said, Dad, I can't read these plant books at night because I can't sleep. He was that excited about it. So that's what he's doing. He's working on a goat farm. He's working on 2 farms. So I am that gives me so much hope that our kids are not only coming back to Vermont, but they're coming back to Vermont to farm? His parents aren't farmers. It's a miracle.
I need that kid's card. Okay, thanks, Judith. All right, lesson 8, we're getting down there. Company culture is not just in the cheese. Building value in the cheese not only relates to excellent milk, but also the rigor of the operations and a staff that is fully engaged every day. It has taken years to achieve, and much is attributable to Adeline Drouart, our general manager, who leads the Creamery team. Having achieved an A rating on our third-party audit for quality and safety, the staff has experienced goal setting and success and was ready to go a little further. 3 years ago, we increased our creamery capacity. It was a dream project, on time, on budget, but complicated, and we didn't miss a day of cheese making. We installed some technology widely used in France to drain our cheese curd. The operating improvements allowed us to pass an 8% increase in the price of goat's milk to the farmers at a time when grain prices were through the roof. After many months of construction, dust and concrete flying, working under some difficult conditions, it all worked. I couldn't help but wonder how employees were thinking about such changes in the company. I meant, it was a big nut. Where does this money come from? Bob and Allison? Was increased efficiency going to cost jobs? It was clear that we needed to engage the staff in understanding how our business expands and how their work can affect the finance of the operation in a more meaningful way. While we were celebrating some banner years, we live with risk every day. Without all eyes on the operations at all times, margins could slip easily. We hired our friend Ari Weinswig from Zingerman's Deli in Ann Arbor to teach us open book management. All employees stop their work for 30-minute huddle once a week and report on metrics that they track continuously. All the operational data is posted on a public whiteboard in our warehouse. Everything from yield on milk, water usage, electricity, staff energy, and social media followers are recorded. It gives the warehouse folks a glimpse at the cash flow of short accounts receivables and the marketing people to see the effects of a high bacteria count milk on cheese quality. Making employees aware of and accountable for the numbers as well as most any targeted improvements in the business not only resulted in savings, but also in creating a more meaningful workplace dedicated to a better creamery community. We tracked the cheese technology to reduce our shrinkage, saving over $400,000 annually. We reduced our water usage by 1/3 while increasing our production by 10%. We added 28% in square footage of manufacturing without increasing our electricity use. As we tracked, we improved, and the staff shared in the savings with a larger annual bonus. Don't get too comfortable there.
Did you hear that? She reduced their water usage by 1/3, even while they were increasing by 10%. Water usage. There's my passion. When I lived in Mexico, first of all, everybody drinks bottled water now. When I was there 15 years ago, only the gringos had to do that. Now everybody does that. Plus, my friends who are very poor get water from the government. Like we have food stamps, it's almost like they have water stamps. And it's piped in for them to do laundry and cooking. That's how bad the water situation is there. So I come home to Vermont, completely flipped out about water. And what do I find? But the Rich Earth Institute. How many people know about it? Woo! Okay. In Vermont, we have this amazing experiment going on. It's called pea cycling. Give me a pee. That's all there is. Just give me your pee. As in urine, right? So you do this little thing, and then every week, or however often, you take it, and they put a magic wand, and they take your urine onto a farmer's field. And they're doing all kinds of experiments to see how much better things grow when we use our own personal fertilizer. richearthinstitute.org.
Great. That's great. All right. Lesson 9. Find your strategic partners, people who need you, and ask them for help. In 1997, Bob and I received the Small Business Administration Award for Vermont. We were expected to throw a party for ourselves, so we held the first Cheesemakers Festival at Shelburne Farms, pairing up 19 cheesemakers with 19 chefs. Many of the 600-plus guests commented they didn't know there were this many cheesemakers in Vermont. Duh, I said to myself. The idea of organizing the Vermont Cheese Council was right in our face, almost too easy. We happen to live in a state where the high cost of production challenges us to do things a little differently here. How does a small cheesemaker tell his or her story? We collaborate. We pool our limited resources to improve our businesses and make better cheese. We create a regional identity for Vermont cheese with a vision that is vibrant and collegiate. When I traveled to sell cheese, people would comment on all the great things we were doing in Vermont, and I would say, really? What are we doing? And they would say, I don't know, but it's really great. Like the wine industry of Northern California, Vermont cheesemakers have been successful in positioning our cheeses as the Grand Cru of American cheese. We are the envy of other regions because we have worked together with state government and higher education. Awareness, great press, and demand have followed. A council of 12 charter members has grown to over 50, and individual cheesemakers, many of whom are scaling to find their sweet spot to sustainability, have all benefited from our mutual success. Lesson 10, take care of Vermont. It's our most valuable asset. On the eve of the 1996 New Hampshire primary, NPR host Linda Wertheimer interviewed some New Hampshire and Vermont business owners. She commented that the buzz is that Vermont is a bad place to do business. I said, Linda, the New Hampshire Butter and Cheese Company just doesn't resonate. I rest my case. I joined the founding board of VBSR, that's Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility, to hang out with like-minded business owners where it was safe to express my personal penchant for reasonable and more progressive public policy. I happily testified at the State House to raise the minimum wage, advocate for family leave, sick leave, against parental notification, and try to provide some balance that protecting the environment and helping working people wouldn't put us all out of business. Thankfully, Vermont has a land use planning law in Act 250 and a robust land trust. Having been an Act 250 permit seeker, I can say that because we trade on the working landscape of Vermont, we are happy to defend the law. Early in the conversation about diversified agriculture, Montpelier was a long way from buy local economic development strategy. 20 years ago, in 1995, VBSR scoured the State House to establish a new economic development model that promoted natural resource-based businesses in forestry, agriculture, and renewable energy. Ellen Kaler's Sustainable Jobs Fund sought to grow an economy unique to Vermont, rather than luring companies to Vermont with the promise of a tax holiday. I recall being in Governor Dean's office when we tried to get the idea into his budget. He put his feet up on the coffee table and praised us for such a visionary idea, which was a nice way of saying, this is so not going in my budget. Against all odds, we managed to cajole the House and Senate that as a matter of public policy, that $1 invested in these sectors would leverage $2 of private investment, and it was good for Vermont. Sustainability was a new word in the Vermont vernacular. The point is that what seems so progressive, fringe, and not a part of the real Vermont economy is normal today. championed by the Farm to Plate Initiative and Paul Costello's Vermont Council on Rural Development's Working Lands program. The very idea that the owner of an artisan cheese company would assert that her company was a perfect example of a sustainable business was an unpersuasive argument. After all, artisan cheese was but a cottage industry. How could we have anticipated 20 years ago the groundswell nationally and internationally of demand for food that satisfies not only the pure enjoyment and deliciousness, but also the desire for authenticity and integrity? All of the efforts of our state and our organizations, from Act 250 to a Housing and Conservation Trust Fund, Vermont Natural Resources Council, VPIRG, Rural Vermont, NOFA, Vermont Fresh Network, the Land Trust, and all of everything everybody that's in the room, would have conspired to create this breadbasket of goodness. While being the first is slow, we can all watch with anticipation new agriculture sectors emerging: cider, beer, value-added meat and charcuterie, even goat meat. After all, it is not an accident that we are not seeing this flurry of activity in New Hampshire. We're close to New Hampshire. Lesson 11. Inventory your best asset. Working moms make great business leaders. In my 30th year of business, having started at age 24, I felt like I've lived many lives through the business. As a single, driven, know-nothing wannabe entrepreneur, a married mother of 3 toddlers under 2.5, knowing enough to know I was an overextended entrepreneur, and now happily married to a great guy, Don Hooper, mother of 3 wonderful young men, Miles, Sam, and Jay, looking for a balanced entrepreneur. In the event that the cabin loses pressure, we are told to apply our own oxygen before helping the person next to us. As mothers, we are reminded that if we are stressed and overworked, we can't be loving parents and spouses. Why would this rule be any different for our business? So how do we do this? In the early years of motherhood, we do everything for our kids. We nurture them and we control their lives. Our kids grow up and they start to do things on their own. In order to fully enjoy them as people and love them unconditionally, we have to let them go. In the early years of the business, we do everything for our business. We nurture it and control it. At some point, the business grows up a bit and it has its own identity, personality, mission. We have to let it go. Today, my job is to attract the best talent I can find. I am a mediocre, seat-of-the-pants manager, and a business has long outgrown my dilettante skill set. I have successfully replaced myself with people who are far more expert and competent than I. I admit that takes a little getting used to. And as my husband will ask, so what is the problem? What more could you want? I've put up a good fight. Relinquishing control and giving credit and responsibility to others around me has actually reinforced my foundation in the brand and rejuvenated my commitment to myself and the things that I care about. I admit that I'm blessed with the choice of how I want to be in the business and what I want to do there. That freedom didn't come without some cost and rite of passage. Though busy and frenetic as ever, I'm steady and trust our good common sense. So we must give ourselves oxygen and space to curate a legacy for what we have put together modestly, luckily in the peak years of competence. Lesson 12, EBITDA is not a legacy. Last year at this conference, well, this is not the conference, I attended a workshop at the VBSR conference and was completely taken with the idea of becoming a B Corp. I immediately thought this would be a way to engage my creamery management to learn about the rigors of social responsibility. Adeline Druitt and Matt Reese worked hard to complete this assessment. They give you a multi-page assessment that takes quite a lot of time to finish. By design, the assessment motivated us to review and update our employee policies. We also realized that while we had operated our business for many years based on values of respect and basic fairness for farmers, employees, and other stakeholders, we had never formally established a mission for the company beyond making great cheese, making our customers and farmers happy, and creating a meaningful workplace. All good, but too myopic if we are to truly be responsible as a corporate citizen and consumer of the planet. We barely passed the assessment. I doubt that when Mahatma Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see," he was thinking about a branding opportunity. That said, good for Yola and the B Corp for getting the conversation started and providing safety for businesses around the world to participate in the change they want to see. Great for Andrea and her VBSR staff for setting the gold standard of getting us into the public policy arena where we get our hands dirty. We have been spoiled to grow up in the most progressive business community in the country and probably the world here in Vermont. Passing the B Corp assessment is the easy part. The real work is to exemplify sustainability and social justice in the minds of our employees. Of our 58 Creamery employees, if I stopped any of one in the warehouse and asked, "Dude, how does it feel to be a B Corp?" Through no fault of their own, I might get a blank stare. Engaging employees in the business strategy, goals, and daily details of open book management is where we can begin to build community and enduring success. I can't help but hope and believe that reaching for risk and finding success in both the long-term goals of one step forward, two back, two forward and one back helps us to embrace change as something hopeful and worth going for. Success, however small, builds confidence. Confidence helps us to overcome our fears. Maybe it increases our awareness of the things we can affect outside of the four walls of our creamery. I'm not going to lie. Vermont Creamery employs a working-class, blue-collar group of awesome people who work very hard. They will work all weekend without complaint, as long as they can get to Thunder Road, get their deer, and drive a sled to work. While they don't relish the free goat cheese at their disposal, they are incredibly prideful of what they do and all the accolades and awards that we have received. They are loyal to the company and grateful to be adopted by the Vermont Creamery family. Most of them think I am a nut riding my bike to work, having a tantrum when we buy bottled water for a meeting, picking through the trash for recycling faux pas. I may be a liberal, but I'm also a libertarian at the Creamery. When I hear Rush Limbaugh over the airwaves in our warehouse, see a Sports Illustrated swimsuit calendar in the shop, and I can park my used Prius next to an F-250 with a bumper sticker that says, "Hybrids are for douchebags," I am up for the challenge. Testifying as Allison Hooper in the State House is no longer good enough. I need to engage Vermont Creamery as a company and brand to exemplify sustainability, good health, carbon reduction, social justice, and making the world a better place. We have a young staff. They're all having kids. I worry for those kids and the planet they will inherit. I shudder to imagine a future grandchild who asks, "Grammy, you knew the planet was burning up and you did nothing?" I won't have it. I worry about the increasing disparity of wealth in our society. It can't be good for Vermont, small businesses, and working families and farmers. If we are successful in engaging a staff to pay attention to the cheese and have a high level of accountability for their success at work, maybe we could engage them to feel like they are making a difference in the world around them. For all of us, 30 years seems like a long time to do one thing. The work has changed with lots of tough love, formative events, trusting the gut, living in the real world, quality is number one, stay focused, go with the flow, add value, create a community, collaborate, don't pave Vermont, lead with compassion, look beyond EBITDA. We may be successful in conquering many business challenges, but then if you're like me, you might still ask, so what? We are only making cheese. We're not solving world peace. Have I left the world a better place? Did we help a farmer keep their land working? Did we help an employee engage in the community? Will I regret the risks that I didn't take? A hand that I didn't take or give, a relationship neglected, love that I didn't express? Many, perhaps most of you, know Edward Abbey's exuberance. Let's close on this uplifting irreverence. One final paragraph of advice. Do not burn yourselves out. Be as I am, a reluctant enthusiast, a part-time crusader, a half-hearted fanatic. Save the other half of yourselves and your lives for pleasure and adventure. It is not enough to fight for the land. It is even more important to enjoy it while you can, while it's still here. Get out there and hunt and fish and mess around with your friends. Ramble out yonder and explore the forests, climb the mountains, bag the peaks, run the rivers, breathe deep of that yet sweet and lucid air, sit quietly for a while and contemplate the precious stillness, the lovely, mysterious, and awesome space. Enjoy yourselves, keep your brain in your head firmly attached to the body active and alive, and I promise you this much. I promise you this one sweet victory over our enemies, over those desk-bound men and women with their hearts in a safe deposit box and their eyes hypnotized by desk calculators. I promise you this, we will outlive the bastards. Thank you. Do you want to do one more? Do you want to do the hands? We have time for more improv.
So I told you that my passion is water, and I know that everybody here has many passions about the world too. So in InterPlay we do hand dances, and we do them on behalf of things. So we're going to do a hand dance, and you can do it on behalf of whatever your passion is. And you can do a hand dance on behalf of food justice, and you can do a hand dance on behalf of Aunt Sally, who has a tumor. It's a wide open hand dance. So I'm going to warm up your hands. So just shake a hand. Oh, by the way, if you want to do this in your imagination and not in real life, that's fine too. The thing I love about InterPlay is there's no way to do it wrong. Okay, so do some fast stuff with your hand for 10 seconds. 1 or 2 hands, whatever. Do some slow stuff. And some jerky stuff. Some smooth stuff. And explore the space around you without whopping your neighbor's nose. And throw a little paint on the walls. Throw a lot of paint on the walls. Oops. And flick a little paint on your neighbors. And let your hand find a place to rest on yourself. Pretty much your mom and your dad who touch you on the face, and your partner. It's very sacred. So just experiment, explore what touches you. Give yourself a massage. Now you have 75,000 other tools in that toolbox of your hand that you've been using all your life. So these are just a few to warm us up. So we're going to use some beautiful music. You can close your eyes if you'd like, but we're just going to spend a couple minutes doing a hand dance on behalf of whatever your joy or concern is.
got one. We have some time if anybody has questions of Judith or of me before you go on to your next event.
Standing on the shoulders of the company that you've built, what are the issues that you hope to impact now?
You know, I am very outspoken with the management team about making sure that all of our new construction is, sustainable design. We're trying to go for a net zero ready building design. We are looking at reducing our carbon. We have all of our power at the farm is powered by solar. We have plans to put in a digester, which would convert our way to energy. So that's very much a part. It's sort of like a right to grow, if you will. You know, if you're gonna grow the business, you got to be able to be responsible and take care of what you're using, and that's kind of my cause celeb, I guess, in the creamery. But also that the farmers are doing well. You know, even in our own farm, we had our first operating profit ever in April. It's a huge investment to get there, and with a lot of daily rigor and help from the creamery, from people who make it a habit of tracking that kind of information. And how do we make that easy for farmers and accessible for farmers so they don't have to be an accountant to run a farm. And so we'd like to convert more transitioning dairy farms to goat farms. And, there's a generational shift that's happening right now. So this is an important time. The one generation is getting ready to move on. And, they may not be interested in the latest technology or starting out with a new animal and, learning from scratch. Whereas if we can get those 25-year-olds who had the same sort of idealism that I had 31 years ago, that would be great. So,
as a business owner, a manager of people, and a leader, what are some of the mistakes you've made that you've learned the most from?
I think that for me, if I could do it all again, I would have been much more assertive in the things that I believed in, and I was very careful not to bring my personal my personal politics, for lack of a better word, or beliefs into the workplace and try to insist that others see the world the way that I did. And yet, business I can't think of a better way to affect public policy or people's lives through a business. So I feel much more confident today than I did many years ago, and I think that if I could do it all again, I would have covered a lot more ground earlier on, but I was extra careful not to be too intrusive in other people's belief system. So.
Last summer up on Putney Mountain, I saw where some goats had been brought up and had browsed on the glossy buckthorn for there. I didn't meet the goats, they were gone. But I was wondering if you have any experience with goats from a business point of view or any other point of view with invasive control.
Yeah, I mean, they'll eat burdock. I think they'll eat chervil. But the problem with this, as I see it, is they're kind of obstreperous, curious critters. And it's one thing to put goats out to browse in the south of France, where they go out into the mountains during the day, and when it's time to get milk, they come home because they want to get milked. And with young stock, you've got to actually be with them, or they'll wander off. And of course, there's no fencing. So what we're trying to do with Sterling College and and a little bit on our own farm, is to put buck kids on browse and try to raise them on pasture to grow that part of the farm. You know, when we talked about the whole farm, one of the problems that we have is goats will have 2 or 3 kids, and oftentimes they're males, and so we have to figure out what we're going to do to develop that animal and that goat meat or and so forth. And so putting them out in pasture is a way to do that. So, you know, I'm all for it, but it's a fencing, puzzle for how to keep them from eating where you want them to and not going into land that people don't want them on. So, yeah. So the question is, what breeds are we using? Two parts to the answer. We buy milk from farms, and as far as I'm concerned, any farmer who works with this animal all day long, 365 days a year, I'm certainly not going to tell them what breeds to select, because that's really a very personal thing. I mean, typically farmers select, have breeds that they prefer and want to develop. At Ayersbrook, we have predominantly Sonnens and Alpines. We have one Nubian, I think, and a few Toggenburgs, but we like the Sonnens and Alpines. They get along very well together. They're pretty docile breeds, and we're doing a lot with crossbreeding to try to get hybrid rigor and really breeding for high protein in the milk, a very good milk for making cheese.
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about how you were able to get buy-in from investors and your management team when you decided to get the B Corp certification? Personal or organizational struggles that you
Well, the investors, we didn't ask them. For those who are not familiar with B Corp, a benefit corporation, there are really 2 kinds. One is that you register as a B Corp, and what it does is it allows the business to make decisions not solely for the benefit of their shareholders. So your shareholders can't come after you for doing something stupid like buying a farm. And the B Corp certification is the other certification that requires you to go through a fairly rigorous third-party audit of everything you do, your governance, employee policies, your environmental stewardship, mission, everything. And it was very easy for me to get that done with the management team, because I just said, this is really important to me and we're doing this, and they're like, okay, here we go. And what was great about it is it really gave them a roadmap. So for employees that maybe wouldn't necessarily have thought up a lot of those things, requirements for B Corp on their own, it's a great template, and it's I think it's a really good opportunity for businesses to sort of join a movement. And B Corp businesses get together once a year in a conference that was in Vermont last year. But, Vermont is unique. We have the most robust, sort of socially responsible business community of any place. And this is a way for businesses, in states where they don't have a socially responsible business community to sort of join in a movement, and it's great.
I was wondering a couple things about inputs and outputs from your farm. With inputs, how much of your feed, especially over the winter, is locally sourced, and what is it, by the way? And with outputs, what do you do with the manure? I mean, are you composting it, or what are you doing with it? Spreading it on fields?
All the manure stays on the farm. We compost it and then spread it. I mean, amending the soil is the most important thing that we can do there. And when we bought the farm, there hadn't been cows there for about 10 years, and while they still cut the grass hay, they didn't have a lot of manure to put on the farm, so we have a lot of catching up to do. So we compost it. Goat manure, by the way, is very dry. It's like, it's wonderful manure because it composts very quickly. And in terms of the inputs, we grow the forages at the farm. So we're growing alfalfa, and we don't produce grain there. We have to buy our grain from a grain dealer, but we are producing all of our forages there. All right. You guys ready for more improv?
I don't know if you, like me, thought 12 lessons. And then $1,200 for her first, that she put down. So this 12 thing, I'm like, 12 steps. Definitely 12 steps. So I'm not going to make light of addiction. I've had my own brush with my own addiction to a white crystal and white powder, namely sugar and flour. And I have recovered from that addiction. But I do not want to recover from my addiction to butter and cheese. Don't want to. Especially, now I do get to be Vanna. Vermont Creamery butter. You're not going to believe it. I didn't realize how much, there must be tons of air in most butter. Because this is so thick, there's just no air in it. And so it lasts forever. So anyway, this is my favorite butter now. And I am a butteraholic and a cheeseaholic. And I'm going to celebrate that with a song, and I hope you'll help me. This is a song that if you have teenagers, you are well aware of this song. The original is It's All About the Bass, Not the Treble. And I've changed the words a little bit. So I need some doo-wop kind of stuff. And you can do the beat stack, anytime you want. So, it's all about the butter. About the butter, it's all about the butter. About the butter, about the butter, it's all about the butter. About the butter, it's all about the butter. About the butter, my mama, she told me, don't worry about your size. She said, folks right, little boar booty, hold it nice. You know I won't be a stick figure, silicone Barbie doll. I'm a slow living heifer and I think I'll just be strolling along. Because it's all about the butter, it's all about the butter, about the butter, it's all about the butter, about the butter, it's all about the butter, about the butter.
All right. Thanks, Judith. It's pretty good. All right, a little bit of YouTube. This is interesting. Okay, so that it sounds like that concludes our session. Yeah, thank you all. So, great.